This is the 20 Minutes of Influence podcast with your host, Greg Jameson. Influencer marketing is the process of identifying, researching, engaging, and supporting the people who create high-impact conversations with your customers. On each episode, I talk with industry leaders, business rock stars, and internet celebrities who contribute their knowledge about influencing others and growing your influence.
Welcome to the 20 Minutes of Influence podcast. I'm your host, Greg Jameson. And for those that are tuning in today, I have got a special treat for you. I've got a guest with me today. His name is Steve Favis. And Steve is the co-founder and CEO of Favis, Inc. And he began his lifelong connection with computer programming in 1984 when just at 6 years of age, he learned his first programming language. He actually started even younger than I did. I started when I was in high school, but I was about a decade ahead of everybody else because of the fact that my dad had a portable teletype machine that he brought home, and I got to play with it when I was
nice.
Like I said, about a decade before most of the world had access to PCs. But Steve started even younger than I did. He started at 6. I was like 15. So
Cool.
This is going to be fun.
This will be a lot of fun.
So I'm going to actually not even read the rest of Steve's bio here. I'm going to just kind of turn it over to Steve for a minute and let him tell you about himself, because I'm super excited that he's with us here today. So welcome, Steve, and go ahead and tell our listeners more about yourself.
For sure. Thanks for having me, Greg. Really appreciate it. I'm glad you looked at my bio and everything as far as the computer programming background. My first computer was actually an Amiga 1000, and my first programming language was Amiga Basic. You probably remember Amigas, right? Commodore Amigas. Yeah. I wanted to just play video games on it, and what happened was my father developed obviously an interest in programming when he was working, and he was visually handicapped. So what I did was I helped him read those early computer programming books, because they weren't available on recording for the blind and dyslexic. So I would read them to him. No 6-year-old wants to write computer code. I just wanted to help my father out, basically. So that's kind of the summary of my background and why I learned it and how I learned programming. So.
Okay. And now you've got patents on AI technology, and you're doing all kinds of things. I mean, if anybody's looking at the video here, your lab behind you looks like a great playground for me. It might scare some people, but it looks like a playground to me. So tell us about the AI stuff.
Definitely. Yeah. So I'll give you a little background on the AI in my, I do call it AGI patent, or artificial general intelligence patent. I entered a NASA DARPA hackathon in about 2013 or 14, and it was called the Space Apps Challenge. And what I realized was, it was just a pathfinding and I want to say a pathfinding and kind of a weights and values, like a really crude AI for it was called a Sphero, where it's like a NASA 3D ball that floats around in space. And what I realized that if I just accelerate the clock on the game engine, I could just get to the results of the algorithm faster. And then what I did was I said, well, if I do that, then I also instantiate hundreds or dozens, depending on the computer resources. I could get results a lot faster. And what that taught me was like, well, it's not too hard to implement in a game engine. So how can we progress this even farther and do this to something really applied that we really need? And I realized that I think the ultimate goal in robotics is to just have a universal robotics platform. And I want to use the Turing machine as an example of that mindset. Before compute and stuff during the Turing machine era was, I think it was, from my knowledge, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it was kind of a one computer to do one task. And from the best of my knowledge, Turing made something that was universally programmable. And my objective with this AGI patent, we call it Seraphim now. The AGI patent is to have one robot that does multiple tasks. And I I concluded that that the ultimate universal robotics platform, or the best shape, is already designed, and we're inside of it right now, basically. So what I mean by that is the human form is probably the best thing I know of on the planet Earth, minus sea-based creatures such as a shark, for example. I mean, that can effectively move around an environment, use tools, communicate, and so far, we're still the best machines or things that on Earth that exist, that can do all kinds of crazy things, basically. So this is what I was looking for in a robotics platform, and what that led me to believe was what happened was, I realized that we could train really, really complex systems on a very, very simple system. And if your algorithm is right, you don't have to do too much compute. That was an important lesson I got in college. So as long as that algorithm is right and it's effective and it works, you don't need to compute every little detail. And what I mean by that is specifically fluid simulation and fluid dynamics. We don't really need that for what we have. The AI of today handles that stuff. So it handles the targets of the joints, for example. It handles the speech, for example, computer vision, and all these really are is I want to say Lego blocks that already are tried and true. Computer vision is very mature today. Speech recognition is pretty mature today. Text to speech is pretty mature today. What else is there? How many other technologies that already mature that we can just composite together and create a recipe, I want to say, and not necessarily an ingredient. The ingredients are already made and mature. So if we could put those together properly, then we could have something such as my patent that exists today, which is that the Seraphim, basically. So.
Yeah, as you were saying that, it reminded me of some code that I actually wrote when I was in high school.
Yeah.
Where I was trying to create a game, and I needed a random number in the game to kind of make every interaction of the game be unique.
Yes.
But at least at the time, a random number generator was not really a generator, it was a table of random numbers. And so you would call the rand function and it would pull a random number from this table of random numbers.
Yes.
But if you took that and you multiplied it by the current time, you could get a number that was basically different every single time you ran the game, because you were basing it off of a 24-hour clock. So you multiply the seconds in the day of whenever you happen to hit the random number table, and it would create a pretty unique number where you could create a unique interaction of the game. And
that was the era where the clock was actually bound to the frequency, right? Before pre-turbo button, right?
Yeah. So
yeah.
But what you were saying there about all of these building blocks and stuff and how things.
Yeah. All these artificial intelligence platforms, all these engines, all these simulations or simulator game engines, they're all very mature right now. And all I see in the news is splitting hairs right now. And I think it's mature enough, and even if it only hits 90, 70, 80% of the time, that's still good enough to make something really awesome. So
yeah, so we've got some of these things that are pretty mature, like you're saying, voice to speech recognition and whatnot.
Yes.
And obviously that's very mature, and many of us interact with those things on a regular basis, whether it be through phone or through Alexa or Siri or Google or whoever. But how soon is it, do you think, before we actually start seeing things that look like human beings that are robots that are interacting with us?
So so we are targeting, on that note, we should have a walking system within 2 years. That's what we're targeting. We're building out a machine shop currently. I want to say the reality gap and the difference between simulation and the real world is kind of a chicken and egg problem. You know what I mean? Like, how can you train a human body if you don't have the body? So, you know what I mean? And
Yep.
I keep on seeing people building black boxes and saying we're not going to have AGI, but a black box is not going to learn anything. It has no sensory feedback, and you need to create that. And that's the reason why the game engine exists. That trains physics. It trains vision. It trains it trains voice. It trains a lot of stuff, and you can accelerate that. So we're never going to have AGI or general intelligence, super intelligence from a server farm. Well, unless it has an input and output method that is based upon the real world and can autonomously or learn the real world, basically. And that's kind of what the patent revolves around. Did you have a chance to review the patent by any chance, or?
No, I did not look at that.
Oh yeah, you check out the patent. I think that'll answer a lot of questions. But in summary, the patent's published. It was granted in 2018, and in summary, I want to say I'll use human mind. Human mind is an example of what metaphorically the components are. The cloud is basically like the consciousness, and but it's not conscious. It's not a conscious system. The cloud is like I want to say imagination is more of an accurate thing, and we can calculate as much as we want on that, depending on compute, basically, depending on what the task we need at hand. The edge board is kind of like, I want to say, the lower brain where it controls all the core motor skills and stuff like that. And just your standard cell phone already has enough compute power to take care of motor skills, speech, and all that stuff. And then the next thing is the physical stuff, the sensory system, which is very analogous to human anatomy and the way humans move and see the world. It's not as precise or as detailed, but it's enough for it to do significant tasks that we need today, basically. So I think I went on a long rant on that one, but go ahead. What was the?
I've just been thinking myself for the last few years. It's like we've got these robots that can do certain tasks already and look more or less humanoid in form. They're still metal and plastic, but they look more or less humanoid in form. But they're designed to do certain things.
Yeah.
It's like you ought to be able to stick a computer in there like your cell phone and have it respond to voice commands like Alexa does. So now instead of saying, Alexa, turn on the TV, it's like, Alexa, go get me a beer.
Absolutely. And that with the technology and the patents I have, that's completely plausible. You triggered some thoughts in there, but the speech technology we already have is mature. Basically, we can have that. I'll cite two things that were pretty significant about natural language processing and speech technology. There is a chatbot in China called Favis, and this was a tremendously successful chatbot. It was ran by Microsoft, kind of. I guess Microsoft kind of owned the technology, but it was a tremendously successful chatbot. You just type on your phone and talk to it via text. And extremely high engagement. They tried using the same thing in the United States on Twitter, and that one was called Tay. And what happened with the Tay robot, or Tay chatbot, I should say, is the training got commandeered by bots, and it was trained to say some very, very bad things, basically. And so yeah, it was kind of funny, basically, but it's like people were trolling the Tay robot, basically. But what that really means is that there's never going to be there never will be a master algorithm where you just press a button and it learns everything. That's impossible. I mean, when a child's born, it still needs help, it still needs catering, it still needs to show what you need. And I don't think catering and AI is ever going to go away. I think you're always going to need it. But once that task or whatever is mature and it's okay, and it stays within its lane, I should say, depending on whatever that task is, those tasks should be very proficient, and technically they should last forever.
Yeah, that actually triggers a whole bunch of thoughts for me here. One is, are we really setting ourselves up with AI technology for it to be a dangerous thing for us. Like Elon Musk has talked about the dangers of AI technology because of the fact that we're basically turning over, I guess, some of our
Yeah, definitely.
humanness to machines. And then as part of that too, sitting there seeing your 3D printed skulls there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I can show a closer camera view of them too if you want to see them. So yes, exactly. Yep.
3D printers are capable of creating parts for 3D printers. Basically, they can
Yes.
become self-replicating.
Hmm.
So between AI technology and 3D printing technology, is there really this possibility, maybe not within yours and my lifetime, but is there this possibility of things happening like we hear in science fiction of machines basically becoming conscious and
Yeah, I know I know what you're talking about. Nick Bostrom's book. I think he's like a AI specialist, and he wrote a book called Super Intelligence, and I thought it created a lot of fear about it, and I thought a lot of that fear was unnecessary because he didn't really know how to make it, and if he were to make it, how would you cater it? But with my patent, they're still at the core robots. They will be able to do tasks better than us, but the kicker is we will be able to see what they're thinking. It's not like you could hit a button, a boolean, and say kill all humans, don't kill all humans. So it's not like that. It's nothing like that. We could see what they're thinking, and the training program is I want to say it's highly proprietary, highly confidential, and very closely guarded. um, I'll use the nuclear weapon analogy as far as nukes. Um, Not just anybody can hit that nuke button. There is checks and balances, and those checks and balances have to be in place for not only artificial general intelligence but for super intelligence. And going back to the note on whether we should be pursuing this or not, I want to say that we are in an AI race right now, and if we don't lead this race, at least domestically, then I think it's going to be one of the most devastating things that can happen to the United States of America. My country. I love this country. I was born and raised here. Um, the country doesn't owe me anything. I owe everything to this country, and um, I just want to preserve what we have here: the Constitution, Bill of Rights, Second Amendment, and stuff like that. So I want to make sure that this freedom of speech and Bill of Rights, our wonderful Constitution, is preserved. And if we don't get ahead in AI or AI, AGI, or just technology in general, we're going to be left behind. And I want to say this is I released a press release on this. I want to say this potentially could be as devastating as not researching the firearm when we're using bows and arrows, basically. So.
yeah, I totally agree. We have to be the leader in this, or it's going to come back to bite us big time.
Oh, definitely, for sure, absolutely, and that's part of my drive for making the world's best and most advanced artificial general intelligence platform is preservation of what we have here. I have a daughter, and I want to make sure she has all the privileges that I had growing up. So.
Yeah, one of the things that whenever I talk to anyone about artificial intelligence that I always find amusing is back when my dad was still alive, and he was the one that obviously got me into computer stuff as well, but he always used to joke that artificial intelligence is what we use when we don't have any real intelligence.
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So we need to take a quick break. And on the other side of the break, what I want to do is actually talk to you about how we as business people can maybe be looking at AI applications and how we can apply them in our business today. That works for you.
For sure, definitely. I'd love to talk about that.
All right, we'll be right back after this then. Hi, I'm Greg Jameson, the host of the 20 Minutes of Influence podcast. Every week,
I not only have the opportunity, but the real privilege of interviewing experts in their field, true thought leaders, and I get to share this information with you. The purpose of this is really to help you sell more of your products and services online, which is the core premise of my primary business, Web Stores Limited. At Web Stores, we go out and we create e-commerce websites for small businesses. Plus, we do internet marketing and digital advertising for those businesses to really help them sell more online. We have a whole number of resources and tools designed to help make this process easier for businesses, probably much like yours. I've been the author of several #1 best-selling books, including Amazon's Dirty Little Secrets and The Influencer Effect, plus a whole series of online courses if you want to learn how to do this stuff yourself. The best way to remain in contact with me, besides subscribing to this podcast, of course, is to simply go to gregjameson.com/free gift, where I have a special offer for you simply because you are a valued listener to this podcast. Thanks again, and now let's get back to today's episode.
Welcome back to the 20 Minutes of Influence podcast. My host today is Steve Favis. And right before the break, Steve and I we've been talking here about artificial intelligence and robots and so forth, but I posed the question to Steve of how can we apply all of this great stuff that's happening in the world of artificial intelligence and robotics? How can we as business people actually start to apply this and have it make a difference in our business lives? So I'm going to let Steve kind of take it from here and see where our thoughts go.
For sure, definitely. Yeah. For e-commerce and all the platforms that are out there right now, a lot of them are releasing tools that help choices. And I want to say you don't necessarily, in my humble opinion about e-commerce, is you don't necessarily have to create your own platform for this stuff. I believe these giants like Amazon, Microsoft, Google are just leverage what they have already and let their algorithms run. What can differentiate you? If you have a good product, if your SEO is great, and you leverage what the infrastructure exists and focus on product. And I want to say my biggest grievance about e-commerce right now is people, number one, not picking up the phone or not responding to messages or whatever. I think we're going back to a trend where there is real customer service again. You're not sending an email out and waiting 3 days for a response. So I think responsive customer service, not necessarily chatbot, maybe the chatbot could qualify your leads, but I think customer service is really, really critical. And note that a lot of platforms such as Wix right now, if you have a product and a customer that is what you call a hot customer ready to buy, but just has a quick question, you could be anywhere and respond on your mobile phone, and they could process the order from there. So being able to be anywhere with, for example, like a Wix platform or whatnot, and be able to respond to customer service, whether phone calls, emails, or even a little chatbot is extremely, extremely powerful, basically, because it gives you that, I want to say, personal service that people really, really like. I really appreciate it myself. So,
yeah, I enjoy actually going to sites where they have a chat bot, because they can in fact answer the questions that you've got probably 80 or 90% of the time.
Yes, that's right. Exactly.
As long as they have a way for you to say, hey, this isn't getting me what I need.
Exactly. That's right. Yes, absolutely. That's right. Absolutely. For sure.
So yeah, chatbots are definitely one good way, I think, that pretty much any small business can implement a chatbot today. That's pretty rudimentary, I think, in terms.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of chatbot options. I think there's like Pandora bots or whatnot. And if you have high traffic, you probably do want to use a chatbot. But if you have time, there's nothing wrong with personal messages and stuff like that. So if you get those push notifications on your phone, it depends on the volume of your customers. So.
Yeah, and chatbots on a website are one thing where you're sitting there typing things in. I don't know myself how feasible it is for a lot of small businesses to implement voice bots, like what the airlines use or whatever. But
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I notice, some stuff, as long as you're in the right environment, it does pick up properly. Like, for example, um, Siri, Siri voice message on my iPhone is hit and miss. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, and sometimes when you have an urgent message, it's can be really frustrating. So um, it depends on the environment and the timing, basically. So I would say for the e-commerce and like web platforms and stuff like that, as long as you're in a quiet environment, I think these speech dictation platforms work really well. For example, even Microsoft stuff with a Word. Have you used Dictate at all in Word? It's pretty good.
yeah,
It works pretty good, and if as long as you have that good internet connection and also the access to a quiet environment, then they work great. So I think these things I'm very bullish about them. So
yeah, even things where, like this uh, conversation that we're having right now, if we take the voice recording of it and pass it off into a
yes,
transcription software, it's going to hit about 95%, I think,
that's pretty good too.
which
That's
is
pretty
pretty
good.
good.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yep. I don't know if
And
you remember the days of Dragon speech. You had to train it for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours, and it's probably gonna be 60, maybe 60, 70% accurate at the time. But you know what I mean. So
yeah, and so that, yeah, there was a lot of editing, and there's still some editing that has to
there's
be
still a
done,
little bit of meddling. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
but it's not bad. And in fact, I think even translation softwares uh,
Yes.
are pretty good too.
Yes, exactly. Simple stuff can be translated very
They,
quickly.
yeah,
Yeah.
they may not be perfect, but the fact is that when I interact with other people around the world, if I use something like Google Translate or whatever, they know exactly what I'm asking. Even if my grammar is not 100%, they know
Absolutely,
what I'm
that's right.
talking
Yeah,
about.
it's good enough. It's a good enough, almost universal translator from Star Trek. So
Yeah. And so I think that as we uh, sit here and think about the future, and we've got these humanoid type robots that are talking to us, it may not be perfect, but they're going to be pretty good.
absolutely, for sure. Yeah, I'm very, 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 very bullish about speech technology, and these walking and talking robots are gonna happen very, very soon here. So you'll be able to have a decent conversation with them. So
Yeah,
um,
that's going to be an interesting thing for, I think, a lot of humans, and it maybe it's not going to be that big of a deal because we're already talking to phones and talking to our
yes,
computers and stuff. Maybe it'll,
absolutely, that's right. I think some of the Amazon released some of the statistics on the Alexa, and I think 70% of it from memory was non-utility conversation, meaning like people are actually entertaining themselves by talking to the Alexa. It's not all just like what time is it, set a timer or whatever. So
yeah.
people are just amused with talking to something, basically. So
My wife has an elderly aunt that her kids gave her Alexa for her birthday recently, and she's been having a blast with it,
yes,
telling telling her new best friend Alexa to do different things.
that's right, exactly. Yep.
Highly entertaining.
It is entertaining, I have to admit. Google's is pretty good too. The Google Home is fun too. They have a lot of good responses. So
It's what do you think about the privacy issues as it relates to those types of devices?
yeah, in my humble opinion, I don't think we've had privacy since, I want to say, since the Patriot Act or whatever. So I think I think as long as you don't give your credit card number over any device or your banking account numbers or whatever, and as long as there's encryption, and I think privacy is an issue, but the scary part, and I think we're I'm hearing about this repeatedly, is if you say, for example, on like Facebook, let's just say spam, and then you get spam pop-ups on your phone. I don't know if you've heard about this before. So leveraging that for marketing or manipulation, I think is unethical, and I don't think that should be illegal. I mean, I think that should be illegal, but I don't think it's well regulated or will be well regulated. And the GDPR in Europe, I think, is tackling that right now. And as far as the chatbot technology that we use, I want to say there's kind of a zebra effect. We don't care that John Smith, what he said. We just care what the kind of the herd says. Like, what do they want to say? It's not necessarily, we don't want to target a specific person and sell John Smith spam or whatnot. It's more of a collective, like, what do people want to talk about, or what do they want to interact with? And there is a lot of security and detachment from that actual individual versus the actual database. And we assume, like I said in the Patriot Act time, we assume that every database and every voice interaction is already breached. It's already public information. With that philosophy, if everything gets stolen, then it's like stealing dirt. There's plenty of it out there, and there's you should not be able to use that dirt against somebody that it's attached to individually, basically. Are you kind of understanding what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think that, it's going to be an interesting time in terms of advertising because of that. I mean, we've already seen it, like with the amount of data that Facebook was collecting, and
yes,
have kind of gone back the other direction now. And darn good and well, they still have all that data on you. It's just
for sure. No, they can roll it back. Yeah,
look,
exactly. If you had a Facebook account during the first generation, I'm sure it's backed up on a cloud. Everything can be rolled back. Even the internet Wayback Engine, you could roll the internet back on any website, 5, 10, 15 years. So, we just assume that we just have to assume that, that basically since Patriot Act era, and also I think Edward Snowden era too, he kind of released a lot of stuff too. But if you just assume that, stuff is being recorded, and also for enterprise, that your customer database will get stolen or whatever, just make sure there's nothing that, connects them to, there's a security detachment between actual who the person is and what is being sold. Basically, there should be a disconnect there. That's the ideal security setup, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting going forward, I think, in terms of, you and I both know, probably everybody knows that data is out there. The question is what of that data are we allowed to use?
Yeah, exactly, for sure, definitely. You bring up an interesting point. Have you seen the new Westworld series on HBO? They talk about this stuff. It's actually it revolves around this data. I don't want to give any spoilers, but they talk about yeah they talk about in the third season, they talk about how data is used to leverage. I think they're how to leverage people's behavior and make sure they, I want to say, stay within their lane in a certain amount of control mechanism. And I think it seems like they're starting to build something like this with I think it's called social credit or something of that nature, but it was kind of parallel to what seems to be going on today. And as far as the data being used against us, I think, I think companies and corporations may try to do it, but we still have to protect ourselves and watch them in a certain manner where they can't, I want to say, use it against us, or I want to say market in inappropriate manners, or sell the data, or let the data easily get stolen. So I think the biggest liability is a database with, like, for example, medical records, or banking records, or financial records, social security numbers, for example. And these have already been breached multiple times over with the Equifax hack, Department of State hack, just multiple times. Our stuff is at least on the internet at least 3 times over, somewhere on the dark web, sitting somewhere. So,
yeah. Well, as we've talked here today and talked about some of that, and you were talking about the TV show, one of the two TV shows that I've seen in the last couple of years that I think are really fun and mind stimulating for people that are interested in this whole concept here of artificial intelligence and robots and stuff. One is called Better Than Us. I don't know if you've seen that.
I think I've seen that. I haven't seen all of it. I think I saw the earlier episodes. Was that a Russian?
It was a Russian.
Yes, I think I did see the beginning of that. That was pretty intriguing.
It's pretty intriguing. And the other one is called Humans 2.0.
That's correct. Yes, that's right. I think I've seen that too. That was a British one, right?
Yeah, that one was
yes.
British.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, you asked a
Both
question.
very mind stimulating.
Yes, exactly. You asked a question earlier. How long will it be before we see humans artificial, I call them human-like robotic systems that look like humans. That was the design intent of the Seraphim series. We have anatomy that closely mimics humans because we need to the robots need to be able to move like humans to fit in human spaces and use human tools. But the secondary effect of that is bypassing the uncanny valley. I'm not sure if you've heard of that before. The uncanny valley is where a robot almost looks like a person, or it almost looks like a person, but when it moves, it doesn't look right, so it kind of creeps people out a little bit. But this uncanny valley will be bypassed because what I'm using is natural human anatomy, I want to say, and not artificial muscles or non-mechanically sound parts, basically. So if you start oversimplifying anatomy, then the shapes of the way the muscles move, it's going to cause that. It's going to cause that uncanny valley and really creep people out. So.
Yeah, well, this has been absolutely fascinating. We need to wrap it up here, but you want to leave any final thoughts with our listeners, or tell them how they can stay in touch with you?
Yeah, exactly. Well, first of all, I don't think we should be scared of artificial intelligence, or I must say super intelligence or artificial general intelligence. Number one, it's because there are extremely dangerous jobs out there. And for example, firefighting. And I think these robots will be capable of doing that. And there's always a double-edged sword to technology. We have to outweigh the benefits and go forward with it, because at least if the United States doesn't get ahead of it in this race, then we're going to be left behind, and that's not good for anybody. But you can get a hold of me on my new website at far-corp or favisinc.com. That's FAVISINC.com. And the updated website is far-corp.com. It stands for Favis Advanced Robotics, FAR. So.
Great. I will make sure that gets in the show notes. This has been a lot of fun, Steve. Really appreciate your time here today and you sharing your thoughts with us.
Thanks a lot, Greg. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of 20 Minutes of Influence. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please leave a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you are interested in booking myself as a speaker at one of your events, or are interested in any of my coaching programs, please visit gregjameson.com.